welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm your host, Ade Darami, and as ever, recently my co-host has been and is today Mr. Mboj. Mboj, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Ade.
And for old and new viewers, we'll explain briefly how it works. Show is called Week in Review, and that's a kind of giveaway. We look back over 10 big stories from the week and we discuss them in some detail. So let's get cracking. First story is actually about reaction to COVID-19 guidelines. Numbers have been going up, and we've been told to actually re-establish all the protocols that we were keeping when this thing started. Have a look at this clip.
If I wear it for a long time, I can't breathe properly. That is why I took it off and put it in my bag. Wearing a mask is essential because it protects us and people around us, because you don't know who has the virus. It is true that what I did is wrong because I have just put on my mask, thanks to you. So people should observe the WHO guidelines and be vaccinated. I will be taking mine soon.
That lady will be taking hers soon, Mr. Mboj. Delta variant, we're all being scared by it. And we're also being told, you know, all the things that we were doing at the start and then we stopped doing them. Walking around, do you get the sense that people are actually getting to grips with the new danger that we're facing?
Kind of yes and no. Generally, when I look at the public, you know, out there, I don't get that sense. It's only within a certain class of people, if you like, that I get that sense of urgency, knowing that we are in a pandemic. So that is the problem. And this, the Delta variant, as you said, our experiences with the previous variants hasn't been that severe.
Sure.
But now with this one, from all reports, the WHO Africa director saying that with this variant things might change.
That's right.
So far, relatively speaking, compared to other continents, we've not been that hit hard, but that might change with this Delta variant.
Yes, and that might have led to complacency because just before we came into this program, I checked. There were times when it was meant to be at its height in the rest of the world. The Gambia went 3 weeks without any death linked to the virus, and yet just before we came in I checked and there were 5 just the day before this program. So that really gives a kind of sense of the seriousness, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and previously 14.
That's right.
That sort of thing. And from what we're getting from the treatment center being overwhelmed, there's definitely something really terrible happening right now. How far would it go? And also you must also account for or factor in the underreporting,
yes,
given the nature of our systems. There's so much underreporting. So really,
I'm glad you mentioned that because again, as with many of these stories, we discuss them in the office, and I mentioned to somebody in the office that underreporting is likely to be a big factor, and he said, well, why? I said, well, how many times have you been in the office when somebody's got a phone call to say a relative has died? And by the end of that day, they've already buried the person. There's been no autopsy. There's been no check. So this is likely to be quite a significant thing, isn't it, the underreporting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some time back, what did some scientists do somewhere in East Africa? Decided to go to all the cemeteries and have the people there, and they realized that the number of burials were far more than really what the government was reporting.
What would be the norm?
What would be the norm? So we've got an indication of this sort of thing. That's the way we know these things. And what was it recently? Didn't one person, and a guardian of a cemetery in Senegal, came out saying that, oh my God, what we are seeing, the number of burials we are seeing. So these things are keys. They help us get a picture of what might be going on here. It's more or less similar story, really.
Yeah, it's a similar story, and as you say, our neighbours Senegal going through record numbers recently. But the young lady there, they were talking about this thing about wearing masks, and at the beginning of the report, he was saying that people were saying that it's the heat that makes them not want to wear. And we had another person in another report saying they have asthma, and so somebody was saying to them, well, having asthma and not wearing a mask actually does put you at a greater risk than not wearing one. Is it just that people will find excuses anyway not to wear if they can? Because sometimes it can be uncomfortable and they start sweating in there. It's not very pleasant.
It's certainly inconvenient.
Yeah,
We've all experienced it.
Yeah.
But we are in a pandemic. This is a state of emergency.
Is that what we're not grasping?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My personal comfort is very secondary to the wider public good, or the public issue that we have here. So people must grow up in many ways. We can find all kinds of excuses, but that's not really good. Because this is, you see, what they need to realize, it's not about them. It's not just about me. It's about others.
Yeah, that's right.
This is it, really.
And that's a crucial point, because here at QTV and the Q Group, as you know, everybody got vaccinated. And, you know, somebody was asking us why. And we said, well, it's not just about protecting people within the group itself. We interact with customers, we interact with our family members, having interacted with customers. So we're protecting ourselves and we're protecting other people. And it's the same with masks, surely.
Absolutely. My own duty of care to the other.
Yeah,
it's just as
to
simple
the wider
as that.
society.
Massive. So when people think that, well, it's my choice, it's just me. No, it's not like that. The reality is not like that. This is a public health, you know, emergency. It affects everybody. That's why the word public is there. So once we perhaps grasp that, knowing that that's really the only way that we can put the pressure off the health center, which doesn't have much. This is the social distancing, the mask wearing. This is how really we sort of try to stave off any pressure on the system. So we have to grasp it in the sense and grow up and put our personal comforts aside for a while. Then the quicker we will solve this possibly.
Well, this is it. I'm glad you said for a while, because I think that's the crucial point. Because the longer we don't do these things, the longer the blasted thing will stay around.
Will drag on and perhaps mutate
exactly
to more to deadlier perhaps variants than the Delta we're getting. So people must understand the nature of these things. It keeps on mutating, and the more it is around, the more it will mutate. So the quicker you strangle it,
the better for all of us. Thank you for that. That's a scary thought that it keeps on mutating. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Now on to another matter which has been gripping, particularly if you live in the Greater Banjul area, where we've seen the initial operation of this. Talking about Operation Clear the Streets. What's this all about? Have a look.
I have 8 children, and I am the one who provides for them and pay their school fees and everything. I have been selling here for 22 years, and it is where I pay my child's school fees until she graduated. Since the previous government, no one removed us. We are women, and we should be helped and be prioritized, as we play a huge role in the country's development.
There you heard the other side, or one of several other sides of Operation Clear the Streets. For yourself, myself, people who are pedestrians, people who are passengers in cars, these congested roads are a nightmare. But we interviewed people there, Mr. Mboj, who have been selling in a particular spot, albeit illegally, 30 years, and said we were given a matter of hours, not even days or a week, to move. Is this something that was a kind of not foreseen by those who came up with the notion of this whole Operation Clear the Streets?
Yes, sort of a kind of what procedural insensitivity. One understands the imperative of moving these things. And when I was listening to those people affected, those vendors, you feel sympathy.
Sure.
Obviously, their livelihood. But I also hope that I wouldn't succumb to sentimentality.
No.
These are two different things. Here we have to deal with public policy, and you must take difficult decisions and balance different interests.
Yes, because I mean, the complaint we've been having is that you hear some people who, even as they are being evicted, saying, look, we accept that this is being done in the wider public good, but I'm affected on a personal level because I've been working here. You heard that lady saying she put her child all the way through college and so on. And she said they didn't consider giving us an alternative. It's pack up and go, and we don't care where you go. And that kind of insensitivity does make you feel a certain level of sympathy, but as you said, without being sentimental about it.
Yes.
And so, I mean, is there a danger that this could escalate? Because they've started trialing it in certain areas, and then it's going to be kind of broad and wider. I mean, are they learning lessons? I guess it seems a kind of obvious question to ask. And do you get the sense that they might be learning the lessons that they should?
Well, I don't know. Operation Clear the Streets. We've been having all these operations and this campaign. They tend
Zero
to be,
crime.
you know, yes, they tend to be time bound, really. Structurally, one looks at sustainability of the approach of the style here. You have the police, you have NRA in doing these things. I mean, I do not know what areas they've identified. Is it the whole country? Is it the urban? Is it where it's most affected? Can you have these people constantly monitoring them? Isn't this maybe the sort of thing that you go back to the councils? They know their area.
Well, that's right.
They know the trouble spots.
Because they're meant to have devolved certain things to
all of that. Then they can enforce and keep on monitoring. You've reduced the scale. Now you've got the police. We all talk about how under-resourced they are. We all talk about all sorts of things, but it seems to keep on adding more. So with these operations, of course they will go for a week, month, whatever. Can you sustain it, the sustainability? That means the monitoring constantly, having a structure in place. The structure is the problem, not coming up with these operations.
Yes, because I'm glad you mentioned sustainability, because the debate has been, you know, once you've moved these people away, unless it is something that is properly planned to monitor on a regular basis, it starts creeping back. You know, one or two people put their stalls there, and another 2 or 3 join them, and before you know it is mushroomed into something uncontrollable, which is what we have now. But you rightly say, you know, where is the sustainability of it, and where is the monitoring aspect of it? I mean, maybe at some point they will tell us this, but I don't get the sense that that is being factored in very much.
One gets the sense that generally in most things they just come up with ad hoc solutions. One doesn't get the sense that there's a strategy.
Sure. I mean, I want them to disappoint me and say, actually, we do have a strategy, and this is what it is.
Okay, then tell us. Really, so it will be interesting to know within your strategy, I mean, a year's time, what should we expect to see? I mean, you know, you got to give us this success, as it were, benchmarks, as it were, then we find out.
You know, in most other countries, I know we shouldn't keep comparing ourselves to Western countries, but in most countries where they have a strategy of this sort, what they would say is that, you know, they'd hold a press conference, and a member of the press would say, excuse me, what would success look like in a year's time, in 2 years, in 3 years' time? And they should be able to tell us and tell the press that, okay, we're doing this because in 1, 2, and 3 years' time, this and this and this is what we expect to see. But I don't get that at all.
We don't get that sense at all. So this is it. So one really doesn't know. Yes, in some areas people are saying, oh, now they've cleared up this bit that they should have done. We said, you know, fine and dandy, but for how long before they come back? See, we shouldn't gloat. We shouldn't feel, you know, we've sorted it. You know, it has happened once, or we've sorted it out. We've got enough experience now to know that it doesn't work like that. Pretty soon, you know, as you said, one person will come back, another, there's no monitoring before you realize it will mushroom into something else.
Yeah, quite. And I think the best example of how effective it has been so far was a colleague of ours who said that because of the congestion, he would park his car about a mile from the market and walk. And on Sunday he went and he was astonished. The whole place was clear. He could have driven right into the market. And he said it's just unbelievable. He's never seen anything like it in, I don't know, 10 years of living there. So let's see
potential is there.
But how sustainable?
How sustainable?
That will be the test. Thanks for that. And now on to another matter, which we mentioned on the previous program, and it's one that keeps rearing its head because it keeps changing like some kind of, I don't know, Medusa. There's so many strands to this. And I'm talking about the corruption scandal at the Kanifing Municipal Council. Have a look at this and see whether it helps, and we'll be back. Have a look.
In a statement issued by its permanent secretary, Buba Sanyang, seen by QTV, the Ministry of Lands and Regional Government says Mayor Bensouda has overstepped his powers after he announced at his press conference about the matter the resolution of the General Council meeting sending on indefinite leave the concerned officials and withdrawing their statutory allowances. It said the mayor had failed to follow procedures by announcing suspension before sending a formal report to the ministry, as requested by the minister when Mayor Bensouda visited him. In that meeting, Mr. Drame reiterated his position on the normal procedure as per the Local Government Act 2002, particularly the appointment and disciplinary matters that are solely vested in the Local Government Service Commission. He urged the council through the Lord Mayor to rescind council's earlier decision that is unlawful and improper. End of quote, the statement stated.
You heard our colleague Ali say there, Mr. Mboj, I was trying to explain an analogy of this thing to one of my colleagues, a fellow, one of the reporters in the team. And I said, imagine you look and you see a clear piece of water and you think, I'm going to go and drink, and somebody comes along with you and they step and they upset all the mud and they muddy the waters, and suddenly it's cloudy and it's unfit to drink. So where you thought there was clarity, suddenly there are other elements. This is getting quite something, isn't it?
Absolutely. And earlier on you mentioned Medusa. It was like a Medusa's raft of skeletons.
Isn't it?
As it were, all things coming out. You even had somebody send you something. So there were leaks all over the place. Quite interesting. Yes. And then the ministry.
Yes.
That's quite interesting.
That's quite interesting, because the minister went to the extent of issuing a press release, 2 pages, explaining some of the things, and actually quite deliberately. I mean, for me, somebody who wrote press releases for government in England, I was quite surprised at some of the language and the tone of it. You know, for ministers to say in a press release, I was amazed that the mayor did this. I mean, you never say that. There's more sort of diplomatic language that one could use, but it seems to be getting quite messy.
Absolutely. Essentially telling us that the mayor flouted procedure.
And he quoted sections of the
But again, the mayor's office as well, remember their press release, they also quoted sections of the Local Government Act
to justify
that action. That is one bit. But for me, there's another bit. It seemed to me the minister or the permanent secretary focused on procedure rather than the substantive claim.
Yes.
Was this done? So, which led me to the question. We are told by the mayor that they had recovered 2.4 million to the sort of Social Welfare Association.
That's right, yes.
So if Senabu Martin Sonko, if nothing was missing, nothing wrong, they hadn't done anything wrong and stuff like that, where did they get the 2.4 million from?
Recovered from where?
Recovered from where?
Yeah.
Who owns that? Yeah. Something is certainly fishy. Something is definitely going on in there. But one doesn't know. Sure. Apparently, the mayor spoke to the minister, you know, when he found out about these things going on, this fraud going on, and then the minister said to him, give us a report first.
That's right, yes.
But again, the mayor decided to do it otherwise. Why?
Sure. Yes, and for anybody who thinks they come in the middle of a conversation and they don't know what it's all about, I'll try and give you a kind of précis about what led to this. There were allegations that some 12 million had been misappropriated, had been claimed illegally for a land deal, and it has led to the former CEO of the municipal council being suspended. And as Mr. Mboj says, and as we've been discussing here, the minister saying that the CEO was suspended illegally, and he has quoted. The mayor, for his part, has said that this is so serious that he feels duty-bound to bar these people from entering the premises, and had originally sent them on sort of the kind of indefinite leave that we used to hear about in the 60s. And strip them of all rights and privileges. However, there's been some retrenchment. They've now reinstated some of those privileges, but still they are not allowed on council premises. It's not going to end anytime soon, is it?
No, you can sense the courts now. You can smell the courts. They're going to come in because when you look at the minister's letter, they had some few steely lines.
Indeed.
You know, we got a strict look at her to the act.
That's right.
Otherwise, we'll bring in the full force of the law. I'm like, woo, this guy is talking with a clenched fist.
Quite. So, it's messy. And as we say, you know, because it's possibly subject to police investigation, and I would imagine a court case, there's only so much we can say, because really with the leaks, you're not even sure anymore who's saying what, and not a case of who's telling the truth, but people are coming up with different versions, and every time there's a leak, it kind of changes the narrative of what it is we're discussing. So I've even said to my colleagues in the office, you know, be careful, don't run with the first thing you see or hear. Investigate, ask difficult questions, even if you ask difficult questions of your friends, who you've got some of them because of the nature of things, they're quite close to some of the people. Don't just believe it because they're your friends.
Obviously, we must be circumspect, you know, and be careful, look at the details, not rush to any judgment. But the fact that we are having this kind of issue, this kind of problem, I think it's not a bad thing at all. If something is wrong, let's deal with it. You know what I mean? So, and I also hope that it will spark something. This fight against corruption. Never mind so far, never mind the merits of whichever argument, you know, was circulating out there. The very notion, the very idea of that we're having to fight corruption. We hope that other leaders, let's take note. I mean, Talib Bensouda himself said it. There's corruption all over the place. The only reason why we're not getting, you know, this sort of into this kind of a mess, this kind of crisis, mini crisis, if you like, is that perhaps all the leaders are not really doing what they're supposed to do. But we know how our societies are like. We know the kickbacks and bribes for any kind of services, all the kind of rubbish that is going on out there. So we hope that from now on, this will spark a certain willingness, commitment to fight these things.
Let's hope so. You know, we hear all the time about zero tolerance for corruption, but this seems to be a time when, as the mayor says, I'm being transparent and I want it all to be out in the public, not behind closed doors. So let's see how this one develops. But as I said, it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. Thanks for that, Mr. Mbodj. Now, make it in the Gambia, techie fee. This one is another one that generates lots and lots of discussions. And I have to say, since coming to the Gambia, I've been actually quite surprised at the number of Gambians who've said to me, I don't think I can make it here. If I get the first chance, I'll be out. It shocked me, I have to say, just the level of it. Anyway, have a look at this and we'll discuss when we get back.
The Gambia is very hard because even when you're educated and with the right documents, you can't secure a job. This is due to corruption because officials would rather give the jobs to their relatives. Big factories or industries should be established to employ young people. Ablai Jallo, a taxi driver, says young people can make it in the Gambia if they are ready and willing. He adds that he had moved to another country in search of greener pastures, but had to come back to the Gambia and try to make it here. However, he says support and encouragement are lacking.
People trying to make it here. Mr. Mbodj, we hear all the time, and this is not a secret. We see the numbers of people from the Gambia trying to do the kind of irregular illegal crossings. We see young people and you know, our colleague there spoke to some people and it's quite depressing. A few of them thought, yes, you can stay, you can make it here. What needs to be done to change the narrative? Can anything be done?
Oh my God, where do you begin? But in a sense, gladly, it was a mixed picture.
Yes, indeed.
You had
that
some,
pleased me. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, let me put it this way. I, as a citizen, when I look at the society now, look at the economy, look at how things are, the reality is it's a depressing picture.
Sure.
You know, that's the reality. But it doesn't end there. You know, it doesn't end there. Sorry, this is just your historical luck. It's like a lottery, you know. Those who were born in the 60s face different challenges. Those who were born in the 40s face different challenges. So now I must look at my reality, you know, in the cold light of reason.
Yes.
Then it takes a commitment really to like that place otherwise you will just go, you will just leave. It's just easy to leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, one person shocked me and said, you know, if I get a chance to, I'll go and I'll never come back. That really did shock me, you know, as somebody who has returned to this part of the world from living in the UK. It was quite a shocking thing to hear. And the thing is, what was more shocking was he wasn't joking. And I said, but look, one of the reasons why other people come to the Gambia, myself included, is because we see the potential. I said, why are you not seeing it? You're a Gambian, you were born here, brought up here, went to school here. Why are you not seeing? Why is it other people from outside? It's just myself, other people are coming in. And you know, so as I said, is it something we need to teach in schools? And you know, how does one get that?
I said it will be all over the place, at home, in schools, the general temper of argument, the media, everybody is included in this. It's just that we're just facing this world now. The global village is a very funny place.
Sure.
So we've evolved all of these psychological traits now.
Sure.
So now people there's a certain class of people around here, they just must go.
Yeah,
that is what feeds.
Yeah.
And the back way, then you have another channel, the brain drain, that's the other channel. These are the ones that take the flights, as it were, and go.
Yeah.
So you have different channels. You know, it's almost like you have the rural-urban drift.
Sure.
Now, with this global village, it seems that the West, that's the center.
Yeah.
We are the periphery. So that attraction, as it were, of the periphery to the center is seeing the same. So that analogy, as it were, within our borders from rural to urban, then you see globally a similar thing. Some of us from the low-income third, we are the periphery, we are in the hinterland, so we want to go to the center.
Yeah, it happens. Migration is part of our human DNA.
That's it.
It's part of why we populated the world.
The story of mankind, culture is the story of traveling.
Absolutely.
We're always traveling.
Yes.
You know, migration is the history of mankind.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for that. And now on to another matter. We've all been enjoying the Olympics, and Gambians haven't brought home any medals, but could things be better for Gambian athletes? Have a look.
Athletes in Gambia. So like if you understand, have the resources like that most athletes, even in Africa, like the Ghanaian athletes, they're like even having better resources and like better, they were well more organized than we were. So like I used to see some of them coming to practice with no money to go back home. Some of them used to walk from like Bakau, the stadium also all the way to Serekunda or like wherever it is that like they were living. This was like this was their life. So like and knowing that like they're coming from like not like the best homes and stuff, and then like not knowing if they're gonna be like eating dinners even like after these practices and stuff. So like but when it comes to like representing the country, so you need a backing from your country. But with this that federation that we had over there, I used to be asking them just to bring my coach in our Olympic Games. They wouldn't bring my coach athletes in Gambia.
We had Jesuma Sedundur, who when I was in the UK, we used to look and forward to and enjoy his racing, initially for the Gambia, then eventually for Norway. And now he's athletics coach to the Saudi Arabia national squad, no less. So it's not a small role. Samboj, one of the things that I pointed out when I mentioned this to my team, I went around and asked everybody what is the population of the Gambia and what is the population of Jamaica. Now Jamaica, there was even an article on BBC about 2 months ago about how this island of 2.7 million people has a cultural reach that is beyond imagination, whether it's in music, the arts or sport. And so the debate then was that how have they done it? Before I tell you the answer that people sent to me, how have they done it and how could we do it?
Interesting, really, remarkable question there. But again, then it reminds me of certain political economists, what they say that actually success is far more contingent than you think. There's no formula. Nobody else can follow that and get it.
That's
it's
right.
far more contingent than you think.
Sure.
So I will, yes, appreciate that point. I mean, we just saw there a man with Johan Blake.
Exactly.
To the point.
To make a point. Yeah.
So I return here. What is it that we can do now?
Sure.
What is going wrong?
Sure.
It is unrealistic for us, at least in the intermediate term,
Yes.
to have any kind of infrastructure that would prepare people to compete in the Olympics and be winning medals.
Sure.
But can we have a structure of supporting them to go to recognized,
Yes.
world recognized centers to
Yeah.
train? Can we have such a system?
I'm smiling because I was asked to do a podcast, which is going to be out in about a month's time, for an American entity, and they asked me about, what sort of things could America do in Sierra Leone and Gambia, and I said, you know what, the next time somebody from these countries' government comes to you and asks for aid, tell them what we can do is we can take some of your athletes and put them in elite training situations. I mean, until Jamaica started kicking American butt athletically, a lot of Jamaican athletes actually went and trained in the US. And then when the US found that these people were being more successful than it created a resentment. And so what Jamaica did was built, training excellence, standards of excellence training center, and many of the athletes now train at home. And so I said to the guy, I said, this is what America can do. You could either build the infrastructure here in the Gambia or in Sierra Leone, or you could we have some very, very talented athletes. We heard there, Sidindu talking about people, and that's not changed much. They go somewhere to train, they don't even have the bus fare or train fare or taxi fare to get back home. I said, take these people, to elite American colleges where we know, or training centers, train them. And, look, Usain Bolt's now a multi-millionaire. So there is money to be made from sports, and for some people that could be the skill that they have.
Absolutely, and Gina Bass is the poor Olympian.
As she said, she embraced it. She said, because it's the truth.
She embraced it, and this is really what the thing is. So you have like the governing bodies here having you must become more imaginative, more creative in how they can help the athletes.
Yes.
We all know we're strapped for resources in any area that we touch, but we must be more imaginative in how we help our people. Most of these sort of low-income, middle-income countries such as ours, they do get their athletes. Most of them that you see in the Olympics and World Championships, they train perhaps in Europe or in the US and stuff like that. And we have to be realistic about that. But what the country can do here and even help, the sports curriculum from kindergarten, from when you're kindergarten, have a structured so that you could be churning out. And then, interesting, fun, inter-schools competitions and some rewards. That was how we used to be.
And that still goes on in Jamaica. The inter-schools competition is intense. It's like a world championship. I mean, because the standards are so high. And we could introduce something like that here. But we need the infrastructure, we need the facilities for us to have it here.
There was a time when it was so intense as well.
Yeah.
Be it inter-school sports or athletics, football or athletics or anything like that. It used to be so intense here. And come on, man, the Gambia produced Billy when the rest of Africa couldn't.
Exactly.
I mean, that was groundbreaking, given the resources. So people love it. People love the sports. So the authorities just do what you can. There's something that you can do, minimum structural stuff, and then you will see what can reap, and be more imaginative in how you help athletes to reach sort of that elite peak.
Thanks. And I think just in closing that, I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to is that the new sports minister is going around and checking on these various mini stadiums that are being built around the country, and let's hope that certainly helps the football talent. So now to take a quick break, and when we come back we will have 5 more stories, so don't go away. Welcome back after that break. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review with myself, Adi Darami, and my co-host, Mohammed Mboj. Mr. Mboj, thank you for your input for the 5 stories so far. And for anybody just tuning in, you've missed 5 cracking stories. But as I always say, we balance it out because guess what? 5 cracking stories still to go. So don't go away. Now, this one affects myself and Mr. Mboj. We struggle to get to work every time it rains. What is he talking about, you're wondering? Have a look and you'll be in no doubt at all. Have a look at this.
Drivers and passengers plying the highway pass through waterlogged streets during the rainy season every year, which can be attributed to the poor drainage system. The gutters along the highway are meant to ease water passage, but many are filled to overflowing with garbage, preventing water from flowing smoothly. It is the responsibility of both the central and the local government to take care of those gutters, to ease the flow of water, especially when it rains heavily.
Colleague there, Omar P. Jallo, telling us that it's the central and the local government's responsibility. So, boys, the reason we did that story is because some of us came to work on one particular day and we were thoroughly fed up. I mean, I even almost didn't come to work because of the swimming pool that had kind of gathered outside my gate, and I was scared that the car engine would get flooded. But the debate then became, why do we go through this every year and not see a scintilla of effort being made to change, to mitigate, or whatever? Why do we go through this every year?
Yes, I mean, this is what gives me road rage. Now we've sort of normalized it. It's as if we've just settled for the idea that there's really nothing that we can do. We see that there's a lot of road construction in the country. One of our stories will be later. A lot of road construction all over the place. But we're not seeing, it seems to be slow when it comes to certain feed roads, certain places. There doesn't seem to be much going on.
Particularly in places where there are high population sort of concentrations, which means high number of traffic. And I gave the example again in the office. I said, you know, I started coming here in 1994 to the Gambia, and the contrast between the number of cars that one saw on the road then to now is almost unimaginable. I mean, it's just, I don't know how many fold it has increased, but the roads have become extra congested and they have just become progressively worse. I mean, the pictures people are seeing there, that's not made up. That is this week, you know, just 2-3 days ago.
We're all used to it.
Yeah.
every decision.
So, you know, we heard about the 20 new roads that were meant to come with the OIC project. We've not seen anything of that as yet. But is it that we don't complain enough to our, you know, some things have been decentralized, as we were talking on the other story, to local councils. But as we heard there from our colleagues, something like the roads, it's both local and national. And yet I don't get a sense of them coming together to actually solve what is a nightmare for many of us.
No, absolutely. This should have had consequences on the political class. So it's bad roads, that's it. So who do you blame? We are told that the council is responsible for the feed roads. But again, when we take, for instance, Westfield, that one, who is responsible for that, and given it centrality, and you've set the number of people that use it, perhaps that sort of thing should have been prioritized. So you don't get a sense that there's any direction, whoever the authorities are, you know, in dealing with these things, because we face it year in, year out. That in itself shows that that's been no movement.
Sure. I mean, my colleague there talked about poor drainage, and when he came back, I said, I'll leave it in the story. I said, but what you should be talking about is a lack of drainage. Because in many of the roads and the streets, there is no drainage at all. So there's no escape route for the water, the rainwater. And this is not new. It hasn't happened this year. It's happened every year since I've been coming here. And so, you know, you said there should be consequences. But, you know, the same people who we elect locally and even, you know, in terms of central, we'll probably elect them again. And we're not making the demands to say, you know what, you promised you were going to do this, and that. You haven't done it. I'm not going to vote for you.
Absolutely.
You know?
And then you know that for a very, very long time, you know that public administration had really collapsed. There was no monitoring of anything that was going on, you know what I mean, during the Jammeh era. So now, from there now, we come and elect these public officials. These public officials really who had no experience in these things. With Jammeh gone, I mean, that political class, people who should have been in politics, never really had the time to do the apprenticeship before then. So politics was essentially killed. So you've got now this new crop, be it in the National Assembly, be it in the wards. We see them all over the place. So we've got this new crop who having to learn on the job, do not really have any experience of doing politics or public administration or having experience in the right way, because then there were no proper systems, no good practice. You were only doing what one person wanted. Everything was distorted. What you were learning was not it. So now we're having to unlearn a lot of things that we learned then so that we can move forward.
Unlearn. Learn, and at our expense, unfortunately. We're the ones who still suffer on a regular basis when we're trying to get to and from work. We're not trying to get to the moon, just to and from work, and it's a struggle. Thanks for that, Mr. Mboj. Now on to another thing. If you've been watching QTV, you will see that over the last year or two, we've been trying to feature some kind of community and social issues because we feel that's our duty as a broadcasting house, and as particularly on the news, and some of them we've been trying to hold people to account, similar to what we've just been talking about. On this occasion, it's the people at the BRIKAMA fish market. Have a look.
During both the rainy and dry seasons, the market is mostly flooded with water, making the place unbearable for vendors and customers. The water is filthy, contains sewage, attracts insects, and is full of garbage. All this is due to poor drainage system. During a visit by QTV to the fish market, the technical operations manager, Lamin Job, who spoke to us off camera, says fish markets were established by the Ministry of Fisheries and Water Resources in major towns to reduce post-harvest loss in fish production. Mr. Job also stated that the market management are not involved in buying or selling fish. Instead, they are responsible for collecting daily tariffs, selling ice blocks used to preserve fish, and providing storage facilities for vendors.
Now, anyone tuning in, I hope you don't think this is just a program exclusively about bashing those in authority. Well, Mr. Mboj, we live here and we put up with some of these things. Now, the reason we showed those images of that market was I could tell somebody about it, but to see the visual representation of it, that this is where people go and buy their food. They buy fish, they buy vegetables right next to it. And look at the condition of it. Why have we put up with that?
Absolutely, and you call it bashing the authorities. It is the images themselves that are bashing the authorities.
Indeed, we didn't invent what is shown there, and it's not manufactured. That's real.
Yes, and it was interesting that apparently this market was built, what, 10 years ago?
That's right.
Japanese funds, 126 million and that sort of thing.
Yes.
But we tend to see that similar pattern. A donor would come, give us money to build whatever, but once they leave, we don't sustain it. It goes down drastically. So that organizational ability, it's quite embarrassing in many ways having to concede this. That organizational ability seems to be lacking. We cannot run public institutions and make them prosper. Somehow we are like we're overseeing a decline. It's always like trying to manage decline. It's in that sense, not something productive, accumulative. I don't get it.
Yes, I once attended a conference in London to do with Sierra Leone, and the thing that angered the Sierra Leoneans, and in fact ended up with me arguing with them, was that there was a line in the report which said that over the last 30 years, Sierra Leone seems to have lost the maintenance culture that is required to sustain it. And I said, why are you getting angry? It's a fact. It's a fact. People come and build these things, they end up being a white elephant and worse, because we don't maintain it. You know, either we didn't say, or we train the people to maintain it, or we just thank whoever built it, the donor, off they go, and then we just eventually let it crumble to what we've just seen in those images.
Absolutely, and that is really where the challenge is.
Sure.
When I listen to these political parties, people vying to power,
Trying to get our votes.
trying to get our votes, I listen to you very carefully to see whether you've got a proper diagnosis of what is wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
They keep on saying we will increase spending in education or in agriculture, in all of that stuff, not knowing it's the human material that is implementing your policy. That is where the problem is.
That's it.
How do you counter that? To have that organizational nous where I'll do my job properly, the monitoring, making sure that things are right, the proper structure of accountability. That's really what is lacking.
Yeah.
So without that organizational revolution, if you like, most of these projects, plans, whatever, they will go to the devil.
Sure. And a terrible thought to end on, but sad to say, I agree with you. Thank you, Mr. Mboch. Now on to something else, which for me kind of demonstrates the kind of chaos of the society we live in. And unfortunately, in this instance, it led to somebody losing their life. Have a look at this.
This out-of-use truck is the only vehicle spared of the blast. In areas where there are no formal fueling stations, drivers mostly rely on informal local fuel dealers for supply. People who spoke to QTV off camera said they are against having such fuel business in residential areas, as they say this is a warning shot to many others running similar fuel businesses around the country.
Devastation there, quite shocking devastation we've seen there. Apparently one of these informal fueling stops just kind of sprung up. And again, I asked this question, if that was next to my house, I'd make a noise until it was removed. But that doesn't seem to happen here. And the consequence is one person killed, 3 people severely injured. We hear quite horrific burns in some cases, vehicles destroyed, houses destroyed. Mr. Mboch, again, why do we allow this sort of thing?
I can one begin. I mean, accidents do, of course, occur.
Indeed, and that's everywhere.
Everywhere.
You know.
Granted. But again, what is it that I can do? What I can do is perhaps minimize the opportunities for accidents.
Yeah.
There are certain commonsensical things that one can do, you know what I mean? If I take all precaution, yet accidents happen, we tend to understand what happened. But in most of these things, perhaps human error, misjudgment, particularly with the misjudgment or the carelessness, the recklessness, are we going to investigate? Are we going to see any consequences? What happened? So this is the thing. That's why it will keep on happening. The misjudgment, you know, the carelessness, the recklessness, because there will be no consequences.
Because I said to the team, I said, you know, if that happened around where I lived, I would be infuriated, I would be mad, I would be angry, and I would want somebody to pay for it. I said, well, what will happen here is we hold our head in our hands, we'll bury the person who's died, and then in 3 months' time, everybody would have forgotten it. Nobody will go to jail for it, when they should go to jail for a very long time. I mean, is that just a kind of societal thing that we have to just accept that that's how we are?
No, we'll keep on fighting it. That seemed to be the structure. Even where you do wrong, it is very easy for sort of like the elders or people to just talk it over.
Sure. Yeah.
You see, everything is negotiable. We are more for consensus and harmony, as it were, as we call it, that sort of thing. We would sacrifice justice, as it were, for these sort of wet, as I call it, notions. This is what happens. So it sort of breeds a certain culture of impunity. You're doing a lot of things that we shouldn't do, but again, you're not going to have the right consequences. So this is the thing. People and their structures, quite bizarre. Because of the way we are, we create structures that undermine You know, our chances of moving forward. Sure. We are undermining ourselves. It's just quite bizarre.
Exactly. Trust me, you're right. Nobody's doing it. We're undermining ourselves. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboji. We have two more stories. And the next one is regarding drug law enforcement and cracking down on criminal activity around drugs. Our own drug law enforcement agency has just signed an MOU with their Nigerian equivalent. Have a look.
The MOU seeks to strengthen on operations between the Gambia and Nigeria drug law enforcement agencies in the fight against drug trafficking through intelligence sharing, data, and regional cooperation. It has long been accepted that the fight against illicit drug trade, production, and organized crime requires a broader regional partnership. Bakari Gassama, the director of the Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia, says the MOU will benefit both countries. Drugs are trafficked within, through land, sea borders, and by air, clandestinely. Anti-narcotic officers use various tools to combat the trade through intelligence, arresting suspects and handing them to the police for prosecution.
There you heard about what happens, and really we should have given greater prominence to the man who led the Nigerian delegation, because he's got quite a fearsome reputation. He's Mohammed Buba Marwa, a former governor of Lagos, no less, during the Sani Abacha regime. And when he was the governor, he was one of those who said, I'm not just going to talk about zero tolerance on crime, I'm going to crack down and hard. Sometimes people said he overstepped the mark, but that's really not why we're discussing this. We're discussing because of the element of cooperation that there needs to be in order to tackle this. Without that, then it can't be tackled, surely.
Yes, if they have proper structures in place, and this is not simply another MOU signed. I mean, if we mean it and they've got an action plan and you will stick to it and all this rest of it, obviously nobody can knock it. Sure. But let's look at the bigger picture. For a while, West Africa was identified as the next huge drug shipment. There's a hub, you know, the stuff coming from the Andean states coming to South America to up here, West Africa, and then off to Europe, America, and the like. And the money, I mean, it's a highly, highly lucrative business. Billions of
well, this is it. And
so, they are failing somewhere. The trade is growing.
It's growing. It is, isn't it?
The trade is growing.
And the people who suffer at the sharp end of it, you know, in America and Europe, are the ones who are kind of saying, look, get a grip on your area, improve these things, and they're kind of pushing us, prodding us to say, you know, work together, share data to stop these people, because they seem to be having quite easy passage, and then they land up on our shores and people end up dying from the filth that they're peddling. So
this, it seems, is the problem. The big ones can buy these officials. Sure. Yes, and then we'll move on, and then these officials will come to the petty cannabis sell around the corner. You got them. Once in a while, we hear of seizures of huge amounts, as it were, cocaine in this country not long ago. But perhaps every 2 or 3 seizures, maybe 10, 12 had slipped through. Indeed. We really do not know, but the fact that the trade is huge, is booming and growing, that in itself is a picture of some failures in many areas. So this is really the reality, and it's all, people will always go in it. And sorry, our people are sort of bribable, they're quite venal.
Yes, I mean, not linked to drugs, but this so-called hush puppy guy who was arrested ended up telling the Americans that he'd actually bribed the head of the anti-corruption unit in Nigeria to arrest one of his rivals, and that the guy did it. And now the Americans have issued a warrant for that guy's arrest. So, because he said, you know, paid him $1.5 million to do it. So that's unimaginable money. The money gives them power. Indeed. So they use that power to fight back, to corrupt the state and do whatever they need to do to get away with things. So they can even collude with presidents and do whatever. But again, the middle man or the petty seller of drugs, well, that's when these people, that's where they get their credit. Yeah, right. So, as Mr. Mboji said there, yes, it's fine to sign an MOU let's see the implementation, let's see the enforcement of it. And that takes us on to our final story. We don't have much time for it, and it's quite a short one, but it's to do with local people building bridges, roads, and other projects. Have a look.
The development of projects will be implemented in the communities of Sambalolo in Fuladu East, Sonkunda in Tumana District, and Bajakunda in Wuli East. At the launching ceremony, the CEO of Basse Area Council, Usman Toure, said the project is important and all taxes collected by council will be plowed back to the people in the form of development projects, as they are mandated to do.
I'm overwhelmed, and I'm seeing this today as a dream come true, a very historic occasion for that matter, which is also going to be a landmark in the annals of the history of Basse Area Council. It's a dream come true in the sense that since we took over the reins of this particular council, we've promised ourselves and we are going to make sure that any little bit of tax that is collected will go back to the taxpayers.
The development of projects.
Now that's how you impress the voters, Mr. Mboj, and that's one of the reasons why I chose this, because we've been talking about, if people don't deliver, don't vote for them. They said this was in our kind of manifesto. We said that if we're elected, this is what we will do. We're doing it, and we're showing you that we're doing it. I mean, this is the kind of thing that, and as I said, I chose it deliberately for that reason. It's not a kind of party political broadcast for the Basse Area Council, but it's the kind of thing I would like to see more of, where people have said, we're going to deliver certain projects with the money that you pay in your local taxes. We're doing it, or we've done it, and this is it. You can see it, you can touch it.
Yes, but here they were laying the foundation stone.
Yes, yeah. Indeed, for 3 projects.
For 3 projects.
Yeah.
So let's see how long it will take.
Yes, is it sustainable?
Yes, we'll see how long it takes when they finish building it and stuff.
Sure.
I think really that will be the time, really, to feel a sense of triumph.
Yes, because to be fair to them, what they said was that the reason they were doing it was because they didn't want to start it without collecting a certain amount of funds, and they think that they've actually got to that stage, and that's why they feel bold enough to come out and say we're launching these by kind of inviting you to see the foundations being laid. We don't have much time, but I just thought your thoughts on that.
I will suspend my judgment until they're done with the bridge, how much was paid, all the accounting done, then I'll say bravo.
Indeed.
Until then, I suspend judgment.
Indeed. I think as in most of these things, we suspend judgment because we hear about promises, and we've even said on this program and on other programs on QTV that we've been to things where people have promised grand things, they've launched something, and then a year later, it's not got anywhere near where it should have gotten. So thank you for that, Mr. Mboj, and thank you for that last one particularly, and for all the other inputs on the program. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And now to our viewers, obviously a big thanks to you for watching, and as ever, join us next week for some more. Hope you enjoyed this one. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody. Until next week, goodbye.